Hello students and welcome to BA149 Module 2. Let's go ahead and get started with the video lecture. We had a changing world after the pandemic. We used to have a lot of on-site interpretation, and it's been changing now to video remote interpretation, and we're going to cover some of the tools to help you do that. Of course, one of the first questions people ask is, should you use Google Translate? Well, if you look at some of the results you get from Google Translate, such as this phrase over here, don't spill the beans in English, translates to no derrames los frijoles. For those of you who do not speak Spanish, it means to literally spill the beans as it is here, which we know it means don't tattletale, don't tell all the secrets about something. So in this module, I give you some articles on how to work with Google, the pitfalls to avoid in working with Google Translate, etc. So we'll take a look at that in the readings. And of course, there are many challenges to doing this, as I mentioned before, and also many possibilities. This one is something that you can look into. It's an app for your phone called iTranslate, which is a translator and dictionary. It translates automatically and interprets automatically with over 90 languages. And you have an AR and camera translation, so you can look at things with your camera on your phone, and then it'll give you the names of it, and you can even learn a language by doing that. And then Canopy is another one you can look into as a possibility. We're not going to delve a lot into each of these, but I just want to give you some of the options so that you can search to see which you feel more familiar with, more comfortable with, so you can use it in helping you for your translations and interpretations, if the case might be. When you're working with somebody else, as in the booth right here, you might be right next to the person, as these two people are in the same booth. They are sharing notes and letting them know when their turn is to switch from speaker to speaker, etc. after 20 minutes or so. But you may not be in the same booth, even in the same location, and now with remote interpretation, even in the same country, the same continent. So what do? You use technology. You use some cloud sharing software such as iCloud or Dropbox. We're going to look briefly, and one of the assignments is to use the Google Drive applications. So you can be in your own location anywhere around the world and be able to conference interpret by using technology. In Google Drive, for those of you who are not familiar, this symbol over here, when you go to your Google account, you go to the top right and you click there, and you have all these different applications, including Google Drive, which we're going to talk about briefly here in this module. Now, in this homework assignment, this is a very good program that was recommended from a previous instructor. You should be able to create a free account, but I believe they are in transition from one server to another. So if you are not able to create this homework, we'll circle back later in the semester because it's a very good tool. Do watch the video that's there. I'll show you where that is in the introductory video. But do not worry if you cannot complete this homework, because they are in transition in their servers. So if you're not able to do that, don't worry about that. We'll circle back later on in the semester if it's available later. So when you're interpreting with somebody else, you need to be able to communicate. Since we're not in the booth necessarily right next to each other, elbow to elbow, there are many applications that you can use to communicate with your colleagues, such as FaceTime, Skype, and others, but these are the main ones that people use. There are other communication and file sharing applications such as Slack and WhatsApp. And in order to improve simultaneous and consecutive interpretation, you have some tools available in Google Docs with voice typing, and in Word document, you have voice typing. In your top toolbar under Tools, you click on that and then go down to Voice Typing. And you can be using that to take notes, to do simultaneous interpretation, to do consecutive interpretation. And as people are speaking, the software detects the language, gives you a transcription of the speech, and then it's easier for you to look at the transcription and interpret from that, either simultaneously or consecutively. When you're working with other translators, this is more for the translation side of things, you can have a document and a PDF viewer, which you have available here as a Santa Ana College student. You're able to do annotations so that you can check with your colleagues on best practices, best translations, and things like that. And there are other things you want to have when you have video conferencing, especially. You have 3 devices recommended here. So you have something that is used for video conferencing. In this case, you have your laptop with a webcam right there. Then you can refer to the documents that are being shared. And then you have a device to capture sound right there, and perhaps even your phone right there. In addition to that, you want to have a headset, because if you're interpreting simultaneously, you are listening and speaking at the same time. You're going to pick up the English or the source language, and you're going to have the target language as you interpret, and that's going to be confusing. So you do want to have a headset when you interpret. Now, what are some of the protocols that you are going to do when you do conference interpreting, especially, but any other kind of interpreting? You want to ask what is expected. What are the protocols that you're going to be following? What type of interpretation are you assigned to? Is it a medical interpretation, legal interpretation? Is it a conference? What are the topics? What are the terms that are going to be shared so that you can be ready for your interpretation? What are your expectations and those of the participants? Are you expected to switch every 20 minutes with your booth mate? Are you supposed to do site translation of documents that are going to be presented? What about the participants? Have they used interpreters before? And what are their expectations of working with an interpreter? Have the presenters worked with interpreters? Do you have any hand signals or anything to tell them that they're going too fast or what they're saying is not clear enough? All of these things need to be worked out in advance whenever possible. Next, have you learned the technology that is being used? You don't want to be there learning as you go when you get to the venue. What limitations do you foresee in the assignment? And do you have a colleague to work with? And how are you going to communicate during the session? Now, I wish I could tell you that everything you're going to do is going to be smooth and it's going to be perfect every single time. But unfortunately, you're going to run into some troubles, and these are some of the common troubleshooting things that might come up in an interpreting assignment. The first one is that the client or the limited English proficient person does not hear you. So what do? If they cannot hear you, if everybody else cannot hear you, then check your microphone level. Now, it has happened that when we're working with multiple languages, they are in the wrong channel. So they're listening to the Vietnamese interpretation instead of Spanish or vice versa. That is if they can barely hear you. What if the participants cannot hear you at all? Then you want to make sure that your microphone is not muted. So make sure to unmute yourself. If you're doing virtual remote interpreting, the client or LEP cannot see you. Check your webcam. Sometimes you click a button and your webcam gets turned off. Now, this is very important because everything we're doing in remote interpreting is virtual. You need to test your internet speed daily. Make sure that you are maximizing your internet speed, have a good internet service provider, and check it daily because this is how we connect. And if you lose power, that is going to be a big problem because the benefit of having virtual is that everything is connected. The drawback is that if you lose power, then you're disconnected completely. So one thing I heard, especially during the pandemic when everybody was on the internet, people were working from home, sometimes all your devices are drawing too much power. And what one of my colleagues did was that they purchased an emergency power generator so that they can just plug in that if they lose power, because it was happening sometimes. So then she was able to switch back the emergency generator and reconnect to the assignment. And what happens when you're using Word for transcription or you are using Google Docs for the voice typing and it stops transcribing? One of the first things you want to do is to troubleshoot that quickly by simply restarting your software, restarting the Word application or the Google Docs application before you do anything else. Sometimes restart is the best thing you can do. Restart the application itself, and then if that doesn't work, maybe it's your system, so you want to do other things. But the first thing you want to do is restart the application. Now, these are some of the common things that may come up during an interpreting assignment. And just as a reminder, if you get this sign over here, you might be muted and don't even know you're interpreting and nobody can hear you. So if you see these little signs that said you're on mute, and especially when everybody's smiling at you, just go ahead and unmute. All right, and that's it for Module 2.